You're standing at your kitchen sink, wrists deep in warm dishwater, while the last streaks of evening light crawl across a counter you've wiped more times than you can count. And then his voice. In the next room, loud, confident, bragging, he's telling a stranger on the phone about selling a car. Your car, the car you paid for, you maintained. The car that carried you to work on those mornings when no one cared if you made it home. And you hear him call it my car. You hear him laugh and say, you'll get over it because you always do, right? That twist in your chest? It's not just anger. It's the moment you finally see every sacrifice, every ride you gave, every bill you stretched to keep the lights on. It's all vanished to him. Invisible, disposable. And there you stand. In your own house, at your own sink. Listening to your own son sell off the last piece of freedom you've still had on. He expects you to smile, nod, and hand him the keys. So let me ask you, what would you do if the child you protected decided your independence was his to give away, and genuinely believed you'd just stayed quiet? Because you always have. My name is Linda, and I am 58 years old. I am a widow, a mother of 2, and a grandmother. Most of my life has been about stability and quiet sacrifice. I grew up in a small town where people kept their promises. My parents did not have much, but they worked hard every day. They taught me that family came before comfort or convenience. So that is what I built my life around. Family, routine, and doing whatever it took to keep everyone safe. I married young and stayed married for 34 years. My husband, Tom, was not perfect, but he was steady. He worked long hours as a mechanic, and I worked nights as a nurse. We saved every spare dollar for the kids. We skipped vacations so our son and daughter could join school trips. We drove old cars so they could have new backpacks and decent shoes. When other people went out to dinner, I packed leftovers into washed butter containers. That never bothered me. I believed that mothers were supposed to sacrifice. The car at the center of this story was never just metal to me. It was a used silver Camry that Tom found at an auction. He bought it for me the year before he died. Still remember him grinning as he held out the keys. He told me, "You have carried everyone for long enough. This one is for you." That car became my lifeline after the funeral. It took me to grief counseling and double shifts in my daughter's house to hold the grandbabies. When I turned the key, I felt like I could still hear him beside me. But over the years, my son Mark started treating that car like community property. Mark is 32 now, and he has always been my difficult child. Charming when he wants something, distant when he does not. When his marriage fell apart 3 years ago, he moved back into my house. I welcomed him because that is what mothers do. I told myself he just needed time to heal. I told myself I could handle a little inconvenience. The inconvenience slowly turned into a pattern of disrespect that I tried very hard not to name. It started with little comments at dinner. He would roll his eyes when I reminded him about the job applications. He would sigh loudly when I asked him to rinse his plate. "You worry too much," he would say, while his laundry piled up in the hallway. If I mentioned the electric bill, he would joke about my old lady thermostat rules. I laughed along, even when it stung. Then came the emotional neglect that felt like a slow leak in a tire. I would ask about his day and get one-word answers. I would cook meals he liked, and he would grab a plate, take it to his room, and close the door. Holidays became strange and lopsided. My daughter Emily would come early to help me set the table. Mark would arrive late, complaining about traffic, then disappear to the living room with his phone. When disagreements happened, Emily was too sensitive, and Mark was just stressed. At least that was how my siblings saw it when they came over. Somehow I always became the difficult one. Money made everything worse. When Mark lost his second job, he told me he just needed a small loan to get back on his feet. I dipped into the little savings account Tom and I built together. I had never touched it before. I told myself it was temporary. That was 2 years ago. The account is nearly empty now, and the word temporary has stretched into something ugly and permanent. Each month, Mark promised he would pay something. Each month, some new crisis appeared. A broken phone, A friend who needed help. It's an overdue credit card that I had never even heard about. The car became another point of pressure. At first, he only borrowed it occasionally for interviews. Then it was for errands, then for nights out. I would look out the window and see my car backing down the driveway without so much as a knock on my door. I started planning my grocery trips around his schedule. Once, when I asked him to put gas in it, he sighed and said, I am trying, right? Why do you make everything about money? I felt my cheeks burn, even though I had done nothing wrong. Every time I tried to set a limit, somehow the conversation twisted until I felt guilty. When I said I needed my car for work, he said I cared more about my job than his mental health. When I said I needed help with bills, he reminded me that he was going through a divorce and that I should be more understanding. When Emily gently suggested that Mark should contribute more, he dismissed her as Dad's favorite who never struggled. Hearing that nearly broke me. I knew how hard she worked to be kind. The worst part was how people around us enabled him. My sister told me I was lucky that my son still wanted to be close, a neighbor said. At least he is not on the street. When I confided in a friend about the unpaid loans, she asked if I had raised him to be too dependent. Somehow the blame kept sliding back to me. I was the mother. I was supposed to fix everything and smile while doing it. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon that looked ordinary at first. I had just finished a morning shift at the clinic. My feet ached and my back felt tight. I came home, set my purse on the counter, and started the dishes because no one else would. The house smelled like reheated pizza and stale cologne. Mark was in the living room, pacing and talking on his phone. His voice carried clearly down the hall. I heard him say, "Yeah, it is a clean title. In my name, just still registered to my mom for insurance stuff." My hands paused in the water. Then he laughed and said, "She will not make a fuss. She never does." "You are getting a steal, man." The word steal made the room tilt slightly. I turned off the faucet and stood very still. He described my car like it was an old jacket he rarely wore. He talked about selling it by Saturday. He used phrases like, "I need the cash fast and she barely drives anyway." I walked to the doorway and leaned against the frame, my heart pounding. He did not see me. He was too busy trying to charm the person on the other end. My car keys were on the hook, where I always kept them. My name was on the title that sat in my bedroom drawer, tucked beside Tom's old watch. When he hung up, I walked into the living room. My voice felt calm, almost detached, when I asked, "Who were you talking to?" He did not even look embarrassed. He just shrugged and said, "A guy from online. I am selling the Camry. I told you I needed money." He said it like we had already discussed it, like I had agreed. We had not. Not even close. I said, "That car is mine, Mark. Your father bought it for me. You do not get to sell it." He rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might stick. "Mom, calm down," he said. "You barely drive. You were always complaining about bills. This will help both of us. I will throw you something from the sale, something from my own car." Suddenly, I could see exactly how he saw me. Not as a mother or a person, as a resource, a vending machine that sometimes asked annoying questions. That would have been my last straw. People often say when they hear this part, they are right, it was mine. In that moment, something inside me finally stopped bending. It did not shatter. It hardened. I looked at my son, my grown man of a son, and I saw entitlement where there should have been gratitude. I saw a pattern that stretched back years and years. I realized that if I did nothing, he would keep taking until he stood beside my grave, wondering what else he could sell. That evening, while he went out to clear his head, I sat at the kitchen table with Tom's old folder of papers. Car title, insurance statements. The little note Tom had left me years ago, tucked into the folder like a secret. It said, "Protect yourself, Lynn, even from the ones you love." Back then, I thought he was just being cautious. Now I understood. The plan did not come from rage. It came from a deep, aching clarity. I needed to teach my son a lesson that words had never delivered. I needed to reclaim my home, my car, and my self-respect. But I wanted to do it without cruelty. I wanted consequences, not revenge fueled by hatred. There is a difference, even if it is hard to see in the moment. First, I called my friend Denise, who works at the credit union. I asked about putting the car title into a small living trust under my name only. Ski explained the process, and I listened carefully. I scheduled an appointment for the next morning. Then I called my daughter, Emily. I told her everything, from the phone call to his casual dismissal. There was a long silence on the line. Then she said very quietly, "Mom, I think he needs to hit a wall. Let me help you build it." The next day, I left for the credit union before Mark woke up. I took the title, the keys, and Tom's old folder. We updated the paperwork and locked the title into a safe deposit box. Denise explained that without my signature, no sale could go through legally. I felt some of the pressure in my chest ease. On the way home, I stopped by a locksmith and had the locks on the car rekeyed. One set of keys went into my purse. The spare went into a small fireproof box in my closet. Then I called our local police department's non-emergency line. I explained that my adult son was trying to sell my car without permission. The officer listened patiently. He told me that as long as the title was in my name, any attempt to sell it could be reported as fraud. He suggested that if a buyer came to the house, I should have documentation ready. I thanked him and wrote everything down. I felt like a woman preparing for a storm she had finally chosen not to ignore. But that was only the beginning. That night, Mark came home in a better mood, phone in hand. He announced that the buyer was coming Saturday afternoon. "He is paying cash," he said proudly, as if he had accomplished something noble. "This will wipe out my credit card and part of the loan." I looked at him and asked, "What loan, Mark?" He hesitated just a second too long. Then he waved his hand and said, "Nothing you need to worry about." Then he did something I never expected. He leaned over, kissed my cheek, and said, "You are going to see, Mom. This will take pressure off you too. Trust me for once." Trust him. The same son who had rearranged reality any time he wanted something. I swallowed my anger and said nothing. Instead, I asked what time the buyer would arrive. 2:00, he said. "Do not schedule anything. I need you here to sign paperwork, insurance, or whatever." He actually smiled when he said it. What happened next stunned me. Instead of arguing, I agreed. I told him I would be home and that I wanted to meet the buyer. He relaxed instantly, shoulders dropping, mouth curling into that boyish grin I used to love. "You will not regret this, Mom," he said. In a way, he was right. I would not regret it at all. Friday, I spent the day preparing in a different way. I cleaned the house, but not for him. I cleaned it for myself. I put fresh flowers on the table and framed a photo of Tom next to the car in the driveway. I printed copies of the updated title documents and the information the officer had given me. I also printed a list of every loan I had given Mark over the years, as best I could remember. The numbers made my hands shake. It was more than I wanted to admit, even to myself. I also invited a few important people over for coffee on Saturday afternoon. Emily, of course, my sister Carol, who always defended Mark, and my neighbor Dave, who used to work as a cop and knew how to keep situations calm. I told them I wanted to talk about some family boundaries. I did not mention the car. I wanted their eyes on what was about to unfold, not from my description, but from his behavior. Saturday arrived with bright sunlight and a cold wind. Around noon, I watched Mark through the window as he paced the driveway, describing the car into his phone camera. He took photos from every angle, like he had spent years caring for it. He even wiped a smudge off the hood with the sleeve of his hoodie. I felt a distant, sad amusement. He could be so attentive when something benefited him directly. At 1:30, Emily and Carol arrived, along with Dave. I greeted them warmly and offered coffee. Mark frowned when he saw everyone. "What is this, a party?" he asked. I smiled and said, "Just family. We needed to talk anyway." He shrugged, distracted by his phone, and muttered something about dramatic women. That old sting tried to rise in my chest, but I pushed it down. I knew what was coming. At 2 o'clock sharp, a blue pickup pulled into the driveway. A man in his 40s stepped out, holding an envelope. He looked decent and straightforward. Okay, glanced at the car, then at the house. Mark nearly jogged outside to meet him. "Hey man, thanks for coming," he called. I watched through the front window for a moment. Then I stepped outside, motioning for Emily and the others to follow. Mark introduced us quickly, clearly eager to move things along. "This is my mom," he said. "She is cool with everything. Just needs to sign a couple things because the registration is in her name." The buyer, whose name was Josh, smiled politely and nodded to me. "Nice to meet you, ma'am," he said. "Your son says you are ready to let this beauty go." His tone was friendly. He had no idea what he had walked into. I looked at Josh calmly and asked, "What exactly did my son tell you?" There was a small pause. Mark stiffened slightly. Josh glanced between us and said, "Just that the car is his, and you are fine with the sale. That he is helping you out with bills." I nodded slowly, then turned my eyes to Mark. "Mark," I said, keeping my voice even, "who owns this car?" He rolled his eyes and said, "We are not doing this, Mom. The guy brought cash. You said you would sign. Stop making everything difficult." Carol shifted uncomfortably at my side. Emily crossed her arms and looked at her brother with a mixture of sadness and anger. I held up the folder from the credit union. "Actually," I said, "we are going to be very clear today. This car is titled to me. 'Tis in a trust that you have no legal access to. I have spoken to the bank and to the police. If you attempt to sell it without my consent, that is fraud." The word hung in the air like smoke. Josh's eyebrows shot up. He looked at Mark, then at me. "Is this true?" he asked. Mark flushed red, then pale. "She is overreacting," he snapped. "She always does this. She loves drama. The car is basically mine. I've done all the maintenance." Dave cleared his throat behind me. "I have watched Linda pay for that car's repairs for years," he said calmly. "With her own money. Every time." Mark spun toward him. "You are not even family," he yelled. "Stay out of this." His voice had that wild edge I recognized from childhood tantrums. Only this time, he was a grown man screaming in my driveway. "Actually," I said, raising my voice just enough, "everyone here is staying in this, 'cause everyone here has watched me sacrifice for you, Mark, year after year, loan after loan. And today, they are going to see the moment I finally stop." My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. I felt something rising in me that was not rage. It was resolve. Josh shifted his weight uneasily. "Look," he said, "I do not want any trouble. If the car is not really for sale, I will just go." He started to tuck the envelope back into his jacket. Mark panicked. "No," Mark blurted. "Do not listen to her. She said she would sign. This is just her control thing. Stop making me look bad." His words came out desperate now. The mask was slipping. Then he did something I never expected. He stepped toward me like he might reach for the folder. His hand hovered near my arm, not touching, but close enough to send a chill down my spine. That small motion was enough. Dave stepped forward between us. "Need to back up, Mark," he said quietly. Right now, there was a beat of tense silence. A bird called from the tree above us, oblivious. I took a breath and spoke very clearly. "Here is what is actually happening today," I said. "You tried to sell something that does not belong to you. You lied to this man, and you lied to me. You have treated my sacrifices like a bottomless well. The well is dry now." I opened the folder and showed Josh the title with my name on it. Then I showed him the document from the credit union. "There will be no sale," I said. "I am sorry your time was wasted. That is on my son, not on you." Josh looked at the papers, then at Mark, whose jaw worked silently. Finally, Josh nodded. "Thank you for being honest, ma'am," he said. He turned to Mark and added, "You should not drag your mother into your mess, man." Then he walked back to his truck and drove away, taillights disappearing down the street. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. Mark stared at me like he did not recognize who I was. "You embarrassed me," he said finally, voice low and dangerous. "In front of everyone, over a stupid car." He spat the last words like poison. Emily stepped closer to me. "No," she said firmly. "She protected herself. Something you should have done years ago, Mom." Her voice broke on that last word, but she stood tall. This was the moment, the climax I had both dreaded and needed. I looked at my son, my first baby, the boy I had held through fevers and heartbreaks. I felt grief, love, and anger braided together. But above all, I felt done. "Mark," I said, "this is not just about the car. This is about every loan you never repaid. Every bill I covered without a thank you. Every time you used my kindness as a cushion instead of a ladder. This is about you hearing me say no and choosing not to believe it." His mouth opened to interrupt, but I held up my hand. For once, he stopped. "I have a list here," I continued, lifting another paper. "Every amount I can remember giving you. Every time I bailed you out. It adds up to more than the blue book value of this car. I did that because I love you. But love without respect is just exploitation. And I am finished participating in that." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So what? You are cutting me off." He said, "Throwing your own son out on the street. Real classy, Mom." He looked at Carol, expecting backup. She stared at the ground, cheeks burning. For once, she had no defense ready. "Yes," I said softly. "I am. You have 30 days to find another place to live. During that time, you will contribute to the bills. If you do not, I will start eviction paperwork. I will no longer loan you money. I will no longer let you use my things as if they are yours. That includes this house and this car." My voice shook only on the last word. He stared at me like I had slapped him. "You cannot be serious," he whispered. "I am your son." For words that once would have undone me, they did not now. "I am serious," I replied. "I am also your mother, and I have failed you in one very important way. I taught you that you could treat me like this without consequence. That ends today." Tears finally pricked my eyes, but I did not look away. Then she did something I never expected from her. Carol stepped forward and spoke. "Mark," she said quietly, "I have defended you for years. I told Linda she should be more patient. I was wrong. You are using her. You need to grow up." Her voice trembled, but her words were firm. He blinked at her, stunned. What happened next stunned me even more, I admit. Mark's anger shifted into something else. Not remorse, exactly. Panic. He paced the driveway, running his hands through his hair. "You all are ganging up on me," he muttered. "You have no idea what I am dealing with." He looked at me again. "I have debt, Mom. Real debt. You want to talk about betrayal? Dad left us, remember?" The word "left" hit me like a slap. "Your father died, Mark," I said sharply. "He did not leave. He worked himself into the grave trying to provide for us." My voice broke then. Years of frustration poured into those 2 sentences. "Do not you dare rewrite that story to excuse your choices." His shoulders slumped, just a fraction. For the first time, I saw a flash of the scared kid beneath the arrogance. "I am in over my head," he admitted, almost whispering. "I have a gambling problem. I thought if I could just sell the car, I could reset everything. I did not know what else to do." There it was, the ugly core beneath the entitlement. Addiction, desperation, generational pain taking a new shape. My heart ached fiercely. I wanted to gather him into my arms and promise to fix it. That old reflex almost pulled me backward. But I thought of every night I had sat up doing math at the kitchen table, wondering how to stretch my paycheck. I thought of that quiet note from Tom. "Protect yourself, Lynn, even from the ones you love." "I'm sorry you are struggling," I said, voice thick. "Truly. But stealing from me, even on paper, is not the answer. Lying to strangers about my property is not the answer. And asking me to sacrifice the last pieces of security your father left me is not the answer. I took a breath. You need professional help. Not another bailout. Emily nodded beside me. I will help you find a program, she said to him. But you have to go. And you have to stop seeing Mom as your safety net. Her eyes were wet too. This was hurting all of us. The confrontation ended not with shouting, but with a heavy, exhausted silence. Mark stomped back into the house, slammed his bedroom door, and locked it. The dishes rattled in the cabinets. I stood in the driveway, my legs suddenly weak. Emily slipped her arm around my shoulders. Carol squeezed my hand. Dave nodded at me with quiet respect. Over the next month, the resolution unfolded slowly but firmly. Mark tested my boundaries in every small way he could. He asked for gas money. I said no. He accused me of choosing Emily over him. I told him I was choosing myself for once. He brought up every sacrifice he believed he had made, every slight from childhood he still carried. I listened when I could. But I did not bend. I changed the password on my bank account and my online bills. I checked my credit report and found 2 small cards in my name that I had not opened. That hurt more than the attempted car sale. I filed disputes. I shut them down. Logical consequences, one by one. With Emily's help, I found a low-cost counseling center and a gambling support group. We left pamphlets on Mark's dresser. Some nights I heard him moving them, crumpling them, maybe reading them. I did not push. His recovery would be his responsibility, not mine to carry. 30 days later, his room was half empty. He had found a small apartment with 2 roommates. Kay packed his boxers without my help, face closed and unreadable. On his last night, he stood in the doorway of the kitchen, looking at me drying a plate. You really are going to make me do this alone, he said quietly. There was no anger left, only tired disbelief. I set the plate down and faced him. I am going to let you do this without using me as a safety net, I replied. There is a difference. I love you. That has not changed. But I will not let you drown us both while you refuse to swim. My hands trembled, but my words stayed calm. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded once, almost imperceptibly. You surprised me, Mom, he said. His tone held a strange mix of accusation and respect. I did not think you had this in you. He picked up his last box and walked out. The door closed softly behind him. No slam this time. In the weeks that followed, the house felt both emptier and more peaceful. I woke up to quiet mornings and clean counters. My car sat in the driveway, exactly where I left it, keys safely in my purse. When I slid into the driver's seat, the leather still carried a faint scent of Tom's old cologne and grocery bags and long drives home. I placed my hand on the steering wheel and whispered, I did it, you know? I finally protected myself. The car hummed to life like an answer. I started taking small trips just for myself. I drive to the lake with a thermos of coffee, a visit to a bookstore in the next town. Sunday afternoon spent wandering garden centers with no one texting. Where are you? I need the car. Each little outing stitched something back together inside me. I felt like a woman again, not just a mother waiting in the wings. Mark and I still speak, but on different terms. Our calls are shorter, more honest. Some days he is defensive. Some days he sounds tired and humbled. He has attended a few meetings, according to Emily. He has not asked me for money since he left. That boundary holds like a strong fence around my heart. I hope he climbs his own mountain. I hope he finds peace. But I will not walk back down mine to carry him up on my shoulders again. The biggest change, though, is inside me. For years, I believed that good mothers endured anything, that saying no made me selfish, that asking for respect was the same as starting a fight. Now I understand something deeper. Respect is not a reward. 'Tis the foundation. Without it, love just becomes a slow form of self-erasure. If you are a mother listening to this, nodding quietly, maybe feeling that familiar twist in your chest, hear this part clearly. You are allowed to protect what you have built. You are allowed to keep the car you paid for, the house you cleaned, the savings you tucked away dollar by dollar. You are allowed to say, I will help you, but I will not let you destroy me. That does not make you cruel. That makes you a whole person. I still love my son. I always will. But now I love myself too. I choose peace in my own kitchen. I choose keys that stay where I hung them. I choose a life where my sacrifices are not treated like background noise. I choose boundaries, even when they hurt in the short term. Because in the long term, they are the only way any of us can breathe. In the end, the lesson I taught my son was not just about a car. It was about consequences following choices. About a mother who finally decided that her worth was not measured by how much pain she could absorb. About a woman in her golden years who realized she still had time to reclaim her dignity. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done in this situation? And do not forget to subscribe to Golden Years Diary for more stories like this.